Guys, welcome back to the ground room. If you're new here, welcome to the platform where we talk about everything, life in general, and navigating every other aspect of life while staying true to our faith. My name is Masesi, and we are here to chop a chat. If it's not your first time here, welcome back. You know what we do best. We're gonna chop a chat, right? And while I'm so nervous to talk about this, but I've been thinking about something lately, and it's something that's been very close to my heart. While being true and honest to navigating my healing journey, I needed to actually ask myself, what does it look like navigating healing healthily? Because I realized that I wasn't healthily navigating through my healing. Rather, I was very subliminal about it, and there was some toxic behaviors associated with that. See, I've been thinking about something lately, and it's something that's very dear to my heart. I realized that after some self introspection, I needed to ask myself, what does introspection actually look like? What does actual healing look like? And am I navigating my healing in a safe way, in a healthy way, in a way that will leave me whole? One of the aspects that I needed to be honest about is my relationship with myself and why I overstay my welcome in other people's life. Knowing when it's shy but not actually leaving. And I needed to be honest with myself and say to myself, I'm actually confused with emotional intensity. I actually confuse emotional intensity with love. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. It's the obsession that I had, the overcompensation, over analyzing people's behaviors, overthinking, and the emotional highs and lows that came with that, that made me confuse emotional intensity with love. It was just tense, and we assume it was real. But what if it actually wasn't love? What if it was attachment? What if it was limerence? What if we're emotionally attached to the idea of someone more than the reality of who they are? This is the real chat. I feel like there's a lot of contributing factors to why we struggle when it comes to seeking closure. And I made the closure. It's for weeks. But we become so obsessed with needing closure from the other person. Sometimes it looks like needing a last conversation. But do we really need a last conversation? What benefit does it have for us? Will it make it hurt a little bit less? Will it make it easier for you to move on? Or there's actually a side of you that actually presents the need of seeking closure, whereas you're actually just in need with the connection again. Maybe you can start again. So that I don't digress, I'm just gonna look at the notes that I made so that I can bring across the points that I actually want to talk about. The first part being limerence. I never thought limerence was applicable to me. I've come across the term multiple times. You know how social media is. Every now and again, your FYP gets very personal. Every now and again, your algorithm on Instagram becomes personal, talking about limerence and the difference between limerence and love. But I never actually thought that I could be the one that found myself as a limerent person until I did some research and I actually bought a book that spoke about limerence and what it looks like being a limerent person. And also going to talk a little bit about attachment styles. Now, stick with me because we're going to go through this piece by piece, okay? Chat by chat. Let's chop it up. So, the best way I can explain limerence is when you become emotionally consumed by someone, okay? You analyze their behavior, you overanalyze it, you crave their attention, and you leech onto the breadcrumbing that they give you, that it looks like they're giving you the whole entire world, whilst abandoning people who are actually willing to give you more than you deserve or what you actually deserve. I think there's a lot that stems from you becoming emotionally limerent. I won't be the one to tell you that. I had to do introspection myself, and with the help of the book that I was reading, I was able to understand what was my pattern and what caused me to become a limerent person. A lot of conversations here and there. We've had Didi on the podcast. Maybe we'll have her again to come and talk. We'll talk a lot more about limerence and what's so not. I just wanted to introduce this so that you understand the story time I'm about to give you. I realized that I'm a limerent person because I stick with people that I know I don't belong with. I overstay my welcome in people's lives and I overcompensate, knowing very well that I was convicted out of that space, right? So I was associated with someone and I was in a very, very sticking situationship that made me overcompensate and become so limerent that I did not even realize myself after I eventually lived. Now, I don't believe in this thing where we say, no, go back until you can't anymore. No, go back until you can't anymore. Because I went back, and I went back. There was never a time where I say to myself, I can't anymore. The only reason I left the situation was after I actually studied and analyzed the pattern behind my attachment to this situation, right? It's within the conversations that I have with my friends and the ones that I have with myself in my room. Those two are very different, right? When I sit with my friends, I will talk about this particular human being and I'd say, I know very well that I'm not going to end with this person. They are not the person that I'm going to end up with. But the emotional intensity and the emotional weight and the depth that that dynamic or relationship dynamic it had a huge toll on my mental well-being, my emotional well-being, my spiritual well-being, because there are parts and parcels where I had to compromise so much of myself, overcompensating in something that I actually know that I shouldn't be in, but I'm here anyway. One thing that I realized is I stuck because of the emotional validation that I got from that person. The little bits of, the emotional highs and lows that I got, that I realized I'm chasing inconsistent emotional availability over just being at peace. Because to me, peace looked boring, right? Peace looked boring. And I started chasing that. I think another factor that contributed to this was my attachment style and the other person's attachment style. So, this book that I was reading gave a concise breakdown of each attachment style. You can be a combination of more than one attachment style. And it just basically gave an overview of what it looks like when different attachment styles are together, right? We both leech on the emotionality of the whole thing, or the emotional intensity of the whole thing, but actually, realistically speaking, we know that we should have called it quits a long time ago. Don't be me. Don't put yourself in that situation. So, some of us generally fear abandonment. Some people need constant reassurance. Some people pull away the moment things become emotionally serious. Some people want love deeply but panic when they actually receive it, right? And now we start going into the different attachment styles. Part of my healing, I needed to analyze what my attachment style is so that I can understand myself better, why I overinvested in these situations or in this situationship as per se. The healing journey is only just beginning because I started becoming, we'll talk about it in another episode, but I started becoming aware of the attachment style that I had and what part and parcel it played in this. I was caught in something with someone and I kept on constantly looking for reasons to leave, knowing very well that I just had the capacity to stand up and leave because it's not where I found peace. It's not where I found the love, the consistency that I was looking for, the emotional availability that I was looking for. Rather, I was breadcrumbed, and I feel like somehow, somewhere, I started becoming so delusional about the role that I'm playing and so delusional about what this person and I could actually have in a perfect world that I actually started living in that and started playing Bob the Builder. I started projecting some of these things onto myself that maybe if I do this, this person would actually choose me. Maybe if I do this, this person would actually like me enough to stop ABCXYZ. Listen, there's nothing I didn't do. I knew about the things that this person was doing outside of us being together. Him being outside and the types of behaviors that he would actually partake in would come back to me. Was that a reason for me to leave? Did I leave? No. It put me back in a space where I now started seeking closure. Maybe one final conversation. Maybe if we have a sit down and talk about what actually makes him do the things that he does. What actually do I need to do for me to look like the one to him? Let's take it back a bit. I said when I was having a conversation with my friends, I knew that this isn't the person that I'm meant to be with. I'm just emotionally leashed to this person. Now, why am I asking this person, what is it that I can do for you to see me as enough? Why is it that you always want to go out there and seek these certain things? Now, it was constant cutting off this person. But immediately when they come back after X amount of time, we pick up where we left off, and it's as if I forgot everything that they did and the depth of the hurt that I actually realized. Until one day I just realized, no, I don't want to put myself through this anymore. I don't want this emotional turmoil anymore. Clarity is clear to see in Elaine's words. I needed now to understand why is it. And with another conversation that I was having with my friend, she actually genuinely asked me, we had an in-depth conversation about the need of seeking closure. Why do we need closure to move on? Do we really move on, or is it a way of us reforming our connection with that person and hopefully things will get better or things will evolve, they'll change, I'll change, and it will be a happily ever after? I was Boo Boo the fool in the situation. So we have a guest here, but she was just a listener. She just has a question for me, so I'm gonna answer that question.
Yes. So my question is, do you believe that the only way to get over someone is by getting
Under someone?
under someone?
The question is it do I believe that?
Yes.
Or does it help me to get over someone? I need to get under someone.
You.
Okay.
How did
Without
you
giving you
get-
the whole context of the situation that I had with that person, this situationship was for years. And even though I thought that that would help me, it actually didn't. Because I didn't necessarily get under someone, but I started entertaining other people. But they were still the person that was in my mind at the end of the day. They were still the person that I leaned on at the end of the day, right? Even though I'm experiencing and encountering people that actually offers what I want, this breadcrumbing looked a bit more enticing than the other side. So I couldn't necessarily get over the person.
Okay.
And this is why I was saying I'm looking at the emotional intensity. It was not about what they offered. It was about the intentional intensity, the emotional intensity and the weight it had. Because we both knew that this isn't it. And you know, because we've had multiple conversations about it, right? But for some reason, what is the reason that I kept going back even though I knew that this is not the place I want to be in? How many years, how many times did I keep calling you, telling you, even my friends, how many times did I keep calling and saying, I'm done? How many times do we keep calling our friends saying, we're done? But next week, we know you're going to come back and say, hey, no,
He said sorry.
Change my mind. And I think it also sort of, to a certain extent, it also creates toxic relationships with the people around you, with your community. Because in as much as you try to be a friend that shows up in that sense, you want to be there for me. You want to offer me the emotional comfortability. But how many times are you going to tolerate? How many times are you going to tolerate me coming back about the same person over and over and over again? And I think that's also another reason why I appreciate my community so much, especially the people that I've recently started having these honest conversations with, where they give me a platform where I can express myself. And in that conversation, I actually realize that there are some toxic habits that I'm partaking in, yet I'm the very same person. Whew. He just reminded me of something. Google called me out. Google called me out, and I never looked at it the same way again. So, Google had parts of the story times about the things that this person would do, right? And this is before the crown room, actually. And I remember having a conversation with her just after launching the crown room, just after having an interview with them, or a conversation with them rather. And I was venting about this person. I'm like, I saw ABC XYZ. I went through this person's phone. Don't go through your man's phone, you'll find what you want. I will though, because that's the only way I'll find out. I told Google ABC XYZ, I found this one, this. Out of everything she said to me, Masezi, don't be two-faced. Because when you're in front of the camera, you talk about taking accountability. You talk about she basically said you have a Christian podcast, but you're not really living what you're saying on your podcast. Damn. That's when I started being very intentional and started analyzing what is it that contributes to the toxicity. And it's the attachment style, Mohot. It's the attachment style, Chungis. So it didn't necessarily help me get over them. I just needed to be honest with myself. I just needed to wake up from the delusion. And one of the biggest things that contributed to me waking up is the conversations that I was having with the people around me. So shout out to Google and shout out to everyone else. Shout out to my best friend. Shout out to my best friend as well, because wow. You know, we would joke around a lot, but at the end of the day, we have conversations that we know are contributing to our growth. So, anyway, that made me realize that I actually don't need closure. I just need to get up and move on, right? That doesn't, however, mean that I neglected my grieving, because I'm still grieving. The fact that this thing was left unattended, the fact that this thing was left unaddressed. And I would like to say I'm in a better space now than I was, because I'm actually starting to incorporate everything that I've learned about me being a limerent person, me having this certain attachment style, and what attachment style that person has. Because even though you feel entitled to an explanation, even though you feel entitled to certain things, does not necessarily mean that you will get them. People will be who they want to be at the end of the day. People will do what they want to do at the end of the day. People know what they are doing, and you need to know what you're doing as well. Don't overstay your welcome in situations. I've spoken a lot about familiarity, which I think is also another thing that held me back from actually continuing healing healthily, right? Because I was familiar with these patterns. So it was more comfortable being in this than actually trying something new with someone else. You know? So, in me being familiar, in me overcompensating, in me overstaying my welcome, I realized that peace felt boring when chaos was what I was actually used to, right? I was used to inconsistency, emotional highs and lows, confusion, and unpredictability. When healthy love came, it felt unfamiliar. And I think a lot of people don't miss the actual relationship, we miss the emotional stimulation. So I'm just going to read what I wrote here. I think healing starts when you stop romanticizing emotional chaos, when you stop confusing anxiety with connection, when you stop waiting for emotionally unavailable people to suddenly become emotionally available. And maybe closure isn't always another conversation. Maybe closure is recognizing this attachment is hurting me more than it's actually really healing me. And maybe closure is finally choosing peace over emotional addiction. And honestly, I think one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself is to become aware of the patterns that keep pulling you into situations that don't bring you peace. One saying I always say is that if you don't find peace there, then God didn't ordain it for you. So analyze these, look at them, be honest with yourself, not with shame, not with judgment, but to be honest to who you are, where you are, so that you can start with your healing journey. We have another question.
Yes. So my question is, you get into a relationship, right? And you feel like you are happy in that relationship. However, your mind somehow keeps taking you to that toxic relationship. Do you say now that's what you are used to and you're waiting for that? Or is it that you haven't gotten over that specific person?
Yo, okay, that was a mouthful. I'll try to remember your question. So you get into something new,
Yes.
but you still somehow feel like you want to go back. Does it mean that you're over the person?
Not necessarily want to go back, but like in your you know when you're used to something and you're like, yeah, I'm waiting for the ball to drop. Yeah, is it that you haven't gotten used to what is healthy? Yes. Or is it because you haven't gotten used to the person?
I don't think it's because you haven't gotten used to the person. I think when we are so familiar with chaos and emotional unavailability, that's what becomes our love language. That when the opposite comes, we struggle to be receptive of it. If you're used to someone that's emotionally unavailable, if you're used to someone that's inconsistent, you know, today they're all happy, they're going to text you, tomorrow they're not going to text you. You become used to that pattern. I think it's so important. Actually, it's also in the book that I was reading. It talks about your nervous system gets used to it. So we think that it's just surface level. That's why I talk about limerence. That's why it talks about attachment styles. And it also talks about your nervous system getting used to this certain type of behavior. So to know, because I asked someone really this past few weeks, or how do you actually know that you're over someone, right? It takes a lot in knowing whether your nervous system is actually regulated or not. And there's ways in which you do that. So I don't know if this answers your question.
Yeah.
But it's just being familiar with that space that nothing else looks enticing to you. Yeah.
Okay.
Is that okay? Chummies, we've reached the end of the conversation. Very deep, very heavy. But if you've stayed till the end, I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please stay tuned in for more. We're gonna have more about these conversations in the next coming months. Let's listen to each other. Let's not judge, but let's also hold each other accountable for things that are toxic and things that don't contribute to your growth. So much love from the crown room and me to you. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share with someone who actually needs to hear this conversation. Share with your friends who's vented to you about these certain types of things. Maybe they could get a bit of insight. Maybe they could give a bit of insight in their experiences. Bye, guys.